What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to vent a little bit about Elden Ring and the Game Awards. Now, I did a whole video earlier today. I went through all the categories, said what I think they're going to do, and, there was a couple things here and there. I think, like, the voice acting thing. I think Star Wars Outlaws just shouldn't be nominated for anything personally. Characters like Red and Antea from Banishers should have been in the performance. There were some issues there. I think Silent Hill is more horror. Action adventure, I guess, whatever. There was a few things, okay? Few things I ranted on, but I wanted, this was a big thing really ever since the weekend when Jeff and the Game Awards and all that posted that, okay, remasters, remakes, and DLCs can be included, right? That was like this new rule they implemented, and obviously the only thing that was for was Elden Ring. Final Fantasy got nominated for a lot, and you expected Final Fantasy, and that's the thing for me. When I saw that post, right? It's like, well, they're not talking, even though it is a remake, it's so different than the base game. I don't even think there was a remaster. I think I put like Sonic, one of my predictions was like Sonic Cross Shadows for a family game. That's not even there, right? Nintendo took 3 of 5 there. So, when it comes to actual remasters, number one, there weren't that many. Number two, I highly disagree. So we're going to get back to Elden Ring, but just in terms of that announcement, and I'll make a blanket statement, okay? Generally, I think it should be the exact opposite. I think, when it comes to remakes, I think it depends on the category, okay? And this is what I said earlier when I was going over the actual categories. Silent Hill is tough, right? Because Silent Hill does overhaul a lot of stuff. It's actually nominated for Best Story, and I actually very much disagree with that. I love the story. I think the story is very creative. It's very clever. It's still different nowadays, just like it was different back in 2001. Okay, so like it is good. It is really good. But the thing is, when they did this just now, this remake, the story was one of the most untouched things. It was touched a little, but it was one of the most untouched and one of the closer one-to-one things with the original to now than anything else, okay? So I actually don't agree with that. I think this thing like Final Fantasy, that it stays close, but it also radically, if you played Rebirth, right? Radically changes some things, and I think that's enough to like have it be nominated. So for remakes, I think it depends on which category you're talking about. Remasters should probably not be on there at all. There's not enough improvement. You're literally just kind of gloss. I like remasters. I'm actually a big fan. Many people are not, as compared to me, which is okay. But remasters I think probably should be left off entirely. And DLCs I think also might depend on the category. I think if it's something that, if the DLC is too close to the base game and it gets nominated for similar things that the base game would have already won for, it shouldn't be nominated. And I guess what I'm trying to explain, so like Elden Ring got nominated, I think, for like art direction. Elden Ring, also the DLC. And that's something I just don't agree with because like I haven't played it. Okay, I want to make that like blatantly known. You can grill me in the whatever. I don't really care. But what I do know is that, yeah, it did change up some stuff. It is like it is still Elden Ring, hence why it's got the same name, right? It does change some stuff up, but say like art direction, okay? It's still the same visual game as Elden Ring. Even if it does like new locations or whatever, it still is the same visual style as the base game. It's not all of a sudden a side scroller unless all of a sudden it became that, right? So that's kind of my point. Now, I do think if it does something radically different, in like say it tells a really amazing story that's completely separate than Elden Ring, okay, then it could be nominated, and that would be like my rules, okay? That's how I look at these things. So, that's the long of it. The short of it is simply this: Elden Ring should not be Game of the Year. Okay, now that's one thing I think I would put a hard stop on, because at the end of the day, it is a DLC. And I saw this thing on Twitter, too. I saw people talking about it where it's like, yeah, have you ever, like a DLC, do you consider that a new game? And I would consider it new content, but it's not necessarily a new game. Now, maybe the thing is Elden Ring is tough. Like, I want to try to see both sides. Elden Ring is big, okay? Or Shadow of the Erdtree, big, very big. It's a standalone kind of priced thing. Like, I get it to a degree. And again, I think depending on what category we're talking about, honestly, it's maybe a safe, like, cop-out type thing. I really think it just depends on what category we're talking about. Also, the other thing is, like, out of necessity, you could just have it be its own category, right? And you could lump them all together. Again, because of how I feel about remakes, I don't think I would necessarily agree with that either, just to kind of be annoying to everybody. But I mean, if you wanted to put all of those, right? DLCs, remasters, remakes, whatever, you put that all in one category and you just say, what's the best one? You're comparing very different things, so I actually think that would be pretty dumb, right? You'd have to limit it and make categories for each, because you can't have if a game comes out as a remaster, can it really go up against a remake? Can it really go up against a DLC? Those are entirely different things, and well, that's the whole, I just said it, right? If they're entirely different things, why are they in all one category? At the same time, you could actually make that same argument. I think that's maybe the best argument, right? Remasters, remakes, DLC, those are all different things. You know what else is a different thing? The base game. The base game is also a different thing. So why should the DLC go up against the base game? Again, as I said earlier, if it does something so radically different, because if it doesn't do something radically different, it's an extension of the base game that specifically in this case already won a bunch of awards. We already did this, okay? And I'm not like anti-Elden Ring. I'm not anti-FromSoft. And in fact, I'm very pro those things, and I'm glad that it won a lot of those awards. I think that's a good thing. But, when it comes to that, I mean, I think I just said it. If it's an extension, which really I do think Shadow of the Erdtree is, then I mean you got to keep it aside, or you gotta do something other than what you did. I don't really know what you put it up against, right? Because it's like, well, it is a base game per se, but also it's not, because it's called Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, which there was a game called Elden Ring. This is an extension of it, unless it is radically different, which it's not. Like, it doesn't. I do understand, like, from people that talked about how the combat and like the leveling and just the way that the game was kind of constructed, it's very different. In fact, I heard it's much harder, at least early on, versus Elden Ring. So like those things are fine, but those things don't change the whole game, right? It's not all of a sudden a fighter game or a racing game. It's not, or even just it's Bloodborne, Dark Souls. It doesn't become a different FromSoft game. It still is Elden Ring. So like, why is it and especially, again, like the main thing, right? We all knew it. We all knew it when they did the announcement. I should probably also say, I know this might seem like out of sync and all that stuff, but like when it comes to this stuff, I have said before, ultimately, like, your opinion is what matters. Like, award shows are cool, and for this specifically, the actual like world reveals and announcements, and I mean that's. To be honest, as much as Jeff probably doesn't really want it to be known fully as that, it really is known as that. I mean, he sneaks in some of these winners, here and there. So I do just want to kind of bring that up where, like, look, I mean, we've had, like, Overwatch win, and that was one of the more notorious, like, just unbelievable moments that you could do. And there's been some, every year there's always, like, one or two things that happens. Sometimes Game of the Year gets impacted by it, sometimes it doesn't, or even, like, Dragon Age Inquisition, maybe for 2014. I don't know about that one either. So, again, keeping it all in context, like, it's fun I like ranting about and stuff, and I think it is important to talk about because we can make these things better. But at the end of the day, do we care what wins the Game Awards Game of the Year? Probably not. At least not you or me. Maybe the average person, right, goes online and says, oh, well, this game won 7 awards at a award show. Like, that is a big deal to, like, some it could help sales, So, again, to try to see both sides, I get it. Like, some people actually do care about this. I don't, in terms of, like, who wins. I have my own winners, right? I have my own games that I really liked this year or didn't like or whatever. But I do think more of, like, principle, kind of why I want to talk about it. Out of principle, I don't see why this needed to happen. And again, it was very clear it only happened for this. They were just kind of getting themselves ready because in all reality, you're not putting a remaster in any, like, serious category, right? That's not really appearing. Remakes, you are, and it's kind of understood why a remake would be put in these categories. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to explain remaster, because it just doesn't happen. You don't need to explain remakes because we get it, right? We understand, like, it's been altered enough where it should count. But you do need to explain a DLC, right? And by the way, I would say the exact same thing. I don't care what game it is. If Hogwarts Legacy's Definitive Edition comes out, now, again, like, maybe story, right? Because maybe the story is so unbelievably good. Or maybe there's a character that kills it, and that actor, right, should be nominated for Best Performance. See, like, those things, I think, make sense because they're new content, and if they're killer, they're killer. You know what I mean? Like, that's totally cool. But if it's the same thing, even though maybe it's just big, right? Like, like the combat of Hogwarts Legacy's definitive or director's cut is going to be the same thing. Should it be nominated for it? No. The original should have, because the original had it, right? It's more refined or whatever, but it's the original's combat. So I really think it just DLCs should depend on the category. It should be far less than remakes, I believe, and it absolutely should not be. And imagine like looking back at this 10 years from now, and you see, okay, well, Elden Ring wins it, and then Shadow of the, like, you know what I mean? Like, how does that look? that it sweeps, and you're saying a DLC, and this is where I don't like to make these statements, because again, I didn't play the game, so like, take this with a grain of salt. But you're telling me a DLC is just flat out better and deserves the award for the best game of this year when it's not, when it's literally it derives from the base game, right? And you're telling me that game beats every. Now, some people really think this was a very weak year for games. I think it was uneven, but I don't think it was like the weakest year we've ever gotten. There were good games: Metaphor, Astrobot, Stellar Blade, Black Myth. Like, why not give one of them Game of the Year? You know what I mean? When you look at it 10 years, you say 10 years from now, oh, Metaphor won this year. Oh, Astrobot or Stellar. Maybe something comes from behind or something, right? But why would it? You're gonna look back and say, okay, the DLC to one of the most popular games of all time for sure. But you're gonna tell me 10 years from now, oh yeah, the DLC beat every game that came out that year. To some people, I'm sure maybe it does, right? Maybe some people play it and liked it more than anything else. But I don't know. Again, just out of principle, should it be in the same category when you're doing the Game of the Year? I don't think so myself. But you let me know what you think. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.